Senator from North Carolina.
Mr. President, I rise today to tell my colleagues that shortly I intend to ask unanimous consent to call up Senate Bill 338. But prior to that, Mr. President, I'd like to say a few things about it. Mr. President, Senate Bill 338 was introduced by myself, Senator Bennett, Senator Ayotte, and what it would do is permanently authorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It would also guarantee that a small portion of any appropriated money goes towards maintaining access for those who use our public lands, the American people. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is essential in making public lands public by securing recreational areas, particularly where opportunities for sportsmen and others to access existing public lands are limited or precluded. As I'm sure the President's aware, this program expires on September the 30th, and we can no longer wait to reauthorize what I believe is dollar for dollar one of the most effective government programs we have. This is an investment that rivals any Wall Street honey of a deal that I've ever heard of. Every dollar spent has roughly $4 rates of return in either matching funds or money contributed back into our economy. Mr. President, this is an economic driver. The bait and the tackle shop, the apparel, the outdoor apparel, the equipment store, the guide service, the mom and pop lodge, these are all local jobs. They can't be outsourced. Mr. President, I realize this town doesn't take care of, it really doesn't care much about budgets or responsible spending. But the simple truth is, this program is a trust fund codified by law. By law. Every year, no less than $900 million in royalties paid by energy companies drilling for oil and gas on the outer continental shelf are put into this fund. Royalties off of energy exploration, something Congress, when they infinitely set up this program, said it's a good thing. Every year, no less than $900 million in royalties paid go into this fund. The money is intended to, one, protect areas around national parks, rivers, and lakes. I note to my colleagues, not create national parks, to protect. Two, to provide buffers for national forests, national wildlife refuges from development. And three, to provide matching grants for state and local parks and recreation projects. In fiscal year 2013, the Department of Interior collected more than $9 billion from offshore production. How much of that went to LWCF? $306 million. It's barely 1/3 of the amount deposited at the Treasury Department for this purpose. Talk about highway robbery. I can point to numerous years where this has been the case. Over the life of the program, more than $18 billion of land and water conservation funding has been diverted into the general fund to pay for programs other than what they were intended to be there for. This is a covenant with the American people that we've broken time and time and time again, and it needs to stop. My colleagues, this is not a land grab. It's not a land grab program. Some have suggested it is. I would suggest to you it's a land solution. It's a tool. LWCF goes towards the purchase of in-holdings. Those pieces of property that are inside a protected piece that's valuable for the future, and the only reason that they're in-holdings is that they weren't available when that tract was put together. It's used to buy property adjacent to existing boundaries and can help solve management problems rather than aid to them. Let me give my colleagues just one example. Clarks River National Wildlife Refuge in the great state of Kentucky. Acquisition of the track there completed a connection between the refuge lands and the Clark River. Previously, access to the river required excessive hiking because there was no approved vehicle access. These access issues also limited the refuge's ability to provide environmental education and interpretation programs. Now the site provides access to the river for school groups and their transportation, and allows refuge staff to provide hands-on environmental instruction to students. We went from a you can only walk to this land to an acquisition by a conservation component funded by royalties off of oil and gas exploration. And now vehicles can actually ride on it. School children can go there and can go through transitional education for the purposes of understanding why this is such a valuable thing to protect. Most lands acquired with LWCF funds are within the existing boundaries of a federal park, refuge, forest, or other recreational areas. Much of the rest is used for conservation easements and state grants, which do not add to federal management cost. Let me state that again. When we allow this process to take place, we actually reduce the burden on federal agencies from a standpoint of their management responsibilities with federal dollars. These partnerships through LWCF easements are a win-win. They keep ranchers and farmers on their land while maintaining wildlife habitat and open spaces. Strategic LWCF purchases can diffuse conflicts with private landowners by securing permanent access for sportsmen. With changing land use and ownership patterns, areas that were once open and usable are now either blocked or cut off. Public lands are oftentimes inherently sequestered from roads and towns by narrow pieces of private ownership land. LWCF funds bring together sportsmen and willing sellers with the intent of open access for everyone. The land and water conservation is a down payment. It's a down payment on an investment that sustains the American way of life. And the best part, I say to my colleagues, it's paid for. Now, I'm not here to suggest that I want to tackle the pittance that the fund receives and how much it was promised. I'm only here today, along with my colleague from Colorado, to call up the bill to permanently authorize this program so that we don't go through this exercise every time that reauthorization is needed. In a country that continues to explore for energy, and I hope we continue and become self-sufficient, let's use the portion of the resources that we can to fuel the beach renourishment, to rebuild the dunes, to buy those in-holdings, to get buffer zones around those treasures we try to protect. And as we do that, let's open it up to American sportsmen to hunt, to fish, to use. That's what LWCF's about. So, Mr. President, let's start acting like the agreement we made with the American people 50 years ago actually means something. Let's authorize permanently the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And, Mr. President, at this time, I would ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the majority leader, in consultation with the Democrat leader, the Senate proceed to consideration of S-338, that there be up to 1 hour equally divided in the usual form, that following the use of yielding back all of the time, that the bill be read a third time and the Senate vote on passage of the bill with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?